The unexpected encounter. The vast emptiness of space stretched before Captain Elara Vance as she guided her cargo holder, the stellar winds, through the outer reaches of the Orion Arm. The cockpit's dim lighting cast a soft blue glow on her weathered face, highlighting the lines etched by years of solitary travel. Her calloused fingers danced across the control panel, making minor course corrections as she navigated the treacherous asteroid field that marked the border between civilized space and the wild frontier. Another day, another credit, Elara muttered to herself, her voice gruff from disuse. She glanced at the cargo manifest displayed on the holographic screen to her left. Medical supplies to Outpost Zeta 9. Thrilling. The monotony of her daily routine had long since worn thin, but it was all she knew. Elara had been a space trucker for over 2 decades, ferrying goods between distant colonies that clung to existence on the fringes of known space. The job paid well enough, but the cost was a life of isolation and endless repetition. As her ship cleared the asteroid field, Elara allowed herself a moment of reflection. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a meaningful conversation with another sentient being. Her interactions were limited to terse exchanges with port officials and the occasional drunken night at a spaceport bar. The loneliness gnawed at her, a constant companion in the vast silence of space. A sudden beeping from the communications array jolted Elara from her reverie. She frowned, checking the readout. It wasn't the usual chatter of passing ships or automated buoys. This was different, a distress signal, weak and intermittent, emanating from a nearby sector. "Computer, analyze signal origin," Elara commanded, her interest piqued for the first time in months. The A's emotionless voice replied, "Signal originates from abandoned space station designated Echo 7, located in Sector 2814. Last recorded activity, 15 standard years ago." Elara's brow furrowed. Echo 7 was supposed to be a dead relic, stripped of anything valuable years ago. What could possibly be broadcasting from there now? Her better judgment told her to ignore it and continue on her scheduled route. But something, curiosity, boredom, or perhaps a desperate need for something to break the monotony, made her hesitate. "Computer, plot an intercept course to Echo 7, Elara ordered, her heart rate quickening with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. As her ship altered course, Elara ran through the potential scenarios in her mind. It could be nothing. A malfunctioning piece of old equipment sending out random signals. Or it could be smugglers using the abandoned station as a hideout. Either way, it promised to be more interesting than her current delivery run. The derelict station loomed into view, a skeletal structure of twisted metal and darkened corridors. Elara maneuvered her ship towards the main docking bay, wincing at the screech of metal as the airlock struggled to form a seal with the station's aging systems. "Computer, run atmospheric analysis," Elara said as she donned her EVA suit, not willing to take any chances. "Atmosphere within acceptable parameters for human life. Caution advised due to possible contaminants," the AI responded. With a nod, Elara sealed her helmet and cycled the airlock. The stale air of the station hit her like a wall as she stepped through, her helmet's lights cutting through the gloom. Dust particles danced in the beam, undisturbed for years until her arrival. Elara moved cautiously through the station, her hand resting on the grip of her plasma pistol. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft whir of her suit's life support systems and the occasional creak of the station's superstructure. As she approached the central hub, a sound caught her attention, a soft, muffled whimper that didn't belong in this abandoned tomb of a station. Elara froze, straining her ears. There it was again, coming from the direction of the old cargo hold. With her heart pounding, Elara crept toward the source of the sound. The cargo hold's massive doors were sealed shut, but a small maintenance hatch stood ajar. She squeezed through, her suit scraping against the edges of the opening. The beam from her helmet light swept across the cavernous space, illuminating long-abandoned crates and defunct machinery. And there, huddled behind a stack of empty fuel cells, she saw them, two figures, clearly not human, cowered in the shadows. The larger one, distinctly feminine in shape despite its alien features, clutched a smaller form to its chest protectively. As Ilara's light fell upon them, the alien's eyes widened in fear, reflecting an almost opalescent sheen. "Please," the alien spoke, its voice a melodious whisper that seemed to resonate in Ilara's mind rather than her ears. "Please do not harm us." Ilara lowered her weapon slowly, her training warring with her instincts. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said, keeping her voice calm and steady. "I picked up your distress signal. Are you in trouble?" The alien hesitated, then nodded. "We are refugees, the last of our kind. I am Zora, and this is my child." She gestured to the small form still pressed against her. "We are morphs, hunted to near extinction for our unique abilities." Ilara's mind raced. Morphs were thought to be nothing more than a legend, a race capable of altering their very DNA at will. If this alien was telling the truth, she and her child were quite possibly the most valuable beings in the galaxy. "Hunted by whom?" Ilara asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew the answer. "By those who would exploit us," Zara replied, her voice trembling. "Mercenaries, scientists, collectors of rare species. We've been running for so long, but our ship was damaged. We had no choice but to seek refuge here and hope for salvation." As if on cue, a distant boom echoed through the station, causing dust to rain down from the ceiling. Zara clutched her child tighter, fear evident in her alien features. "They found us," she whispered, desperation coloring her words. "Please, I beg you, help us. We cannot fall into their hands." Ilara's mind whirled with the implications. Harboring these aliens would make her a target for some very dangerous people. It could cost her livelihood or even her life. The sensible thing would be to walk away, to pretend she never saw them. But as she looked into Zara's eyes, saw the raw fear and desperation there, something long dormant stirred within her. For the first time in years, she felt a purpose beyond the next cargo run. "All right," Ilara said, making her decision. "We need to move now. My ship stopped not far from here. If we're quick and quiet, we might just make it." Relief flooded Zara's features. "Thank you," she breathed. "We owe you a debt we can never repay." Ilara nodded grimly. "Save the thanks for when we're safely away from here. Can you both move quickly?" Zara rose gracefully, her child clinging to her like a second skin. "We can adapt," she said simply. Another boom, closer this time, spurred them into action. Ilara led the way, her plasma pistol at the ready as they navigated the twisting corridors of the station. The sounds of their pursuers grew louder with each passing moment, the clank of armored boots, the hiss of cutting torches breaching sealed doors. They reached the airlock just as a group of heavily armed figures rounded the far corner of the corridor. Plasma bolts sizzled past Ilara's head as she shoved Zara and her child through the airlock, diving in after them. "Computer, emergency undocking procedure," Ilara shouted as she scrambled to the pilot's seat. The ship shuddered as it tore free from the station, alarms blaring in protest at the rough treatment. Ilara's fingers flew over the controls, bringing the engines to full power. Through the viewscreen, she could see several sleek, predatory ships detaching from the far side of the station. "Hold on," she growled, punching in the coordinates for a blind hyperspace jump. It was reckless, potentially suicidal, but their only chance of losing their pursuers. The hyperdrive engaged with a bone-jarring lurch, catapulting the stellar winds into the swirling chaos of hyperspace. Ilara gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white beneath her suit's gloves. For several tense moments, the only sound was the thrumming of the engines and the ragged breathing of the ship's occupants. Finally, the hyperdrive disengaged, spitting them back into normal space. Ilara's eyes darted across the sensor readouts, searching for any sign of pursuit. "Computer, location check," she barked, her voice tense. "Current location, Zeta Reticuli system, Uninhabited sector, the AI responded coolly. No other vessels detected within sensor range. Ilara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. They were safe for now. She turned to her unexpected passengers, still huddled in the co-pilot seat. Zora's otherworldly eyes met hers, a mix of fear and gratitude swirling in their opalescent depths. "We should be clear for the moment," Ilara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But we can't stay here long. The ship isn't exactly built for stealth." Zora nodded, her alien features arranging themselves into what Ilara assumed was an expression of concern. "Where will we go?" she asked, her melodic voice tinged with worry. Ilara ran a hand through her graying hair, mind racing. "I know a place," she said after a moment. "It's not much, but it's off the main trade routes. We can regroup there, figure out our next move." As she set a course for the remote outpost of Nova Haven, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that she was in way over her head. She'd gone from lone space trucker to fugitive protector in the span of a few hours. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. The journey to Nova Haven took 3 standard days, during which Ilara learned more about her unusual companions. Zora's child, whom she called Lyra, was still too young to fully control its shape-shifting abilities. Ilara watched in fascination as the small creature's form rippled and changed, sometimes mimicking objects around the ship's cramped living quarters. "It's a defense mechanism," Zora explained one evening as they shared a meal of reconstituted protein packs. "In times of stress, young morphs instinctively camouflage themselves." Ilara nodded, her curiosity piqued. "And you? Can you change your appearance at will?" A small smile played across Zora's alien features. "Would you like a demonstration?" Before Ilara could respond, Zora's form began to shimmer and shift. In a matter of seconds, she found herself staring at an exact duplicate of herself. The effect was uncanny, right down to the small scar above her left eyebrow. "Holy shit," Ilara breathed, unable to hide her amazement. Zora's laugh came from Ilara's own mouth, a surreal experience that sent a shiver down her spine. "It's more than just appearance," she said, her voice a perfect mimicry of Ilara's gruff tones. "We can alter our very DNA, adapting to new environments or assuming the capabilities of other species." As Zora shifted back to her natural form, Ilara felt a confusing mix of awe and unease. The implications of such an ability were staggering. No wonder they were being hunted. Nova Haven loomed into view, a ramshackle collection of habitation domes and jerry-rigged spacecraft clustered around a small, rocky planetoid. Ilara guided her ship towards a nondescript docking bay on the outskirts of the settlement. "Stay close," she warned Zora and Lyra as they disembarked. "This place isn't exactly friendly to outsiders." The streets of Nova Haven were a chaotic jumble of alien life forms and patchwork architecture. Ilara led her companions through winding alleys, keeping a wary eye out for any signs of trouble. They eventually reached a rundown cantina, tucked away in a quiet corner of the settlement. As they entered, a grizzled Arcturian behind the bar looked up, his 4 eyes widening in recognition. "Ilara, you old space dog," he bellowed. "Didn't expect to see your ugly mug around these parts again." Ilara managed a tight smile. "Good to see you too, Zark. Listen, I need a favor. A big one." Zark's expression sobered as he took in Zora and Lyra. "Ah, I see. Got yourself mixed up in something, eh? Come on back. We'll talk in private." In the privacy of Zark's back room, Ilara explained their situation. The Arcturian listened gravely, his multiple eyes narrowing as he absorbed the information. "You've stepped in it this time, Ilara," Zark said when she finished. "Harboring the last of the morphs, that's going to bring down some serious heat." "I know," Ilara replied, running a hand over her face. "But I couldn't just leave them. Can you help us?" Zark was quiet for a long moment, his alien features unreadable. Finally he nodded. "I might know someone who can get you off-world, maybe even set you up with new identities, but it won't be cheap." Elara's heart sank. I don't have much in the way of credits, she admitted. To her surprise, Zara spoke up. I may be able to assist with that, she said softly. From a hidden pocket in her clothing, she produced a small glowing crystal. This contains genetic information from my people. It's valuable to the right buyers. Zark's eyes widened at the sight of the crystal. That'll do it, he whispered. Give me a day to make arrangements. In the meantime, lay low. There's a safe room upstairs you can use. As they settled into the cramped but secure room above the cantina, Elara felt the full weight of their situation bearing down on her. She slumped onto a threadbare couch, exhaustion seeping into her bones. Zara sat beside her, her alien warmth a strange comfort. I cannot thank you enough for what you've done for us, she said softly. Elara turned to look at her, struck once again by the otherworldly beauty of her features. I'm not sure I've done you any favors, she replied bitterly. We're still running, still in danger. But we're alive, Zara countered. And we're not alone. That means more than you know. Something in her voice made Elara's heart skip a beat. She found herself leaning closer, drawn in by the intensity of Zara's gaze. For a moment, the galaxy beyond their hidden rooms ceased to exist. A sudden pounding on the door shattered the moment. Zark's panicked voice came through. Elara, we've got trouble. Big trouble. Elara was on her feet in an instant, hand going to her plasma pistol. She cracked the door open, seeing fear etched across the Arcturian's features. What is it? She hissed. Genesis, Zark replied, the word sending a chill down Elara's spine. They're here, tearing the place apart looking for you. Elara's mind raced. Genesis was bad news, a shadowy organization with tentacles reaching into every corner of the galaxy. If they were involved, this was bigger than she'd imagined. How did they find us so quickly? She wondered aloud. Zark's expression turned grim. That's the other thing. Your old buddy Darius is with them. He's the one leading the search. The name hit Elara like a physical blow. Darius had been her partner years ago, before she'd gone solo. They'd parted on bad terms, but she never imagined he'd stoop to working for an outfit like Genesis. We need to move, Elara said, turning back to Zara and Lyra. Now. As they hurried to gather their meager belongings, Elara's mind whirled with possibilities. They were trapped, outnumbered, and outgunned, but giving up wasn't an option. She'd made a promise to protect Zara and her child, and she intended to keep it, no matter the cost. The sound of booted feet echoing through the cantina below spurred them into action. Elara led the way to a narrow window overlooking a back alley. It would be a tight squeeze, but it was their only chance. As Zara and Lyra slipped through the opening, Elara took one last look at the room that had briefly been their sanctuary. She could hear voices now, harsh and escape from danger. The narrow alley behind Zark's cantina was shrouded in darkness, the faint glow of Nova Haven's twin moons barely penetrating the dense network of pipes and cables overhead. Elara helped Zara and Lyra navigate the treacherous footing, her eyes darting back and forth, searching for any sign of pursuit. We need to get off-world, Elara whispered, her mind racing through potential escape routes. But every spaceport will be crawling with Genesis operatives by now. Zara nodded, her alien features set in a determined expression. Perhaps we don't need a spaceport, she said, her melodious voice tinged with an idea. My people have always been adaptable. If we can find a suitable vessel, Lyra and I might be able to interface with it. Elara raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite their dire situation. Interface? You mean you can control a ship with your shape-shifting abilities? To an extent, Zara replied. It's not perfect, but it might give us an edge our pursuers won't expect. A plan began to form in Elara's mind. I think I know just the place, she said, a glimmer of hope kindling in her chest. There's a scrapyard on the outskirts of the settlement. If we're lucky, we might find something space-worthy there. They made their way through the winding back alleys of Nova Haven, avoiding the main thoroughfares where Genesis agents were no doubt swarming. The distant sound of shouting and the occasional burst of weapons fire spurred them on, reminding them of the danger at their heels. As they neared the edge of the settlement, the ramshackle buildings gave way to piles of discarded machinery and hull plating. The scrapyard stretched out before them, a graveyard of forgotten dreams and failed ventures. There, Ilara pointed, her eyes locked on a battered but largely intact shuttle half buried beneath a mound of debris. That XR-750 might just do the trick. It's an old model, but sturdy. If we can get it powered up, it should have enough juice to break Atmo. They sprinted across the open ground, painfully aware of how exposed they were. Ilara's hands flew over the shuttle's external access panel, bypassing security protocols and coaxing the dormant systems back to life. "I've got basic power," she announced as the shuttle's interior lights flickered to life. "Zara, see what you can do about the propulsion systems. I'll work on getting life support online." Zara nodded, placing her hands on the shuttle's control panel. Her form began to shimmer and shift, tendrils of her being seeming to meld with the ship's systems. Ilara watched in fascination as indicators that had been dark for years suddenly sprang to life. A shout from the direction of the settlement snapped Ilara back to reality. She peered out of the shuttle's viewport, her heart sinking as she saw a group of armed figures making their way through the scrapyard. "We've got company," she hissed. "How much longer do you need?" Zara's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, seeming to emanate from the shuttle itself. "The propulsion systems are responding, but the fuel cells are critically low. We'll have one shot at this." Ilara's mind raced, weighing their options. "All right, here's the plan. I'm going to create a diversion. When I give the signal, fire up the engines and get ready for immediate takeoff. Don't wait for me. If I'm not back in time, you go." "Understood." Zara's form re-solidified, her alien eyes wide with concern. "Ilara, no. We can't leave you behind." "You have to," Ilara insisted, her voice firm. "Protecting you and Lyra is what matters now. Promise me you'll go if you have to." After a moment of hesitation, Zara nodded, her expression a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. Ilara squeezed Zara's hand briefly, then slipped out of the shuttle. She crouched low, making her way through the maze of scrap metal towards the approaching Genesis agents. Her hand tightened around her plasma pistol, a plan forming in her mind. As she neared the Groot, she recognized a familiar figure at its head. Darius. Her former partner looked harder than she remembered, his face set in grim lines as he directed his team's search. Ilara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to do. Then, with a silent prayer to whatever cosmic forces might be listening, she stood up and fired a plasma bolt high into the air. "Hey, Darius," she shouted, her voice carrying across the scrapyard. "Looking for me?" Darius whirled, his eyes widening in shock as he saw her. "Ilara, what the hell are you doing?" "Oh, you know me," Ilara replied, forcing a cocky grin onto her face. "Never could resist a little excitement. How about we catch up, for old time's sake?" She fired again, this time aiming low and sending up a shower of sparks as the plasma bolt struck a pile of scrap metal. The Genesis agents scattered, diving for cover. Ilara took off running, zigzagging between piles of debris as plasma bolts sizzled past her. She could hear Darius shouting orders, organizing his team to surround her. Come on," she muttered under her breath, willing Zara to get the shuttle airborne. As if in answer to her thoughts, the night sky suddenly lit up with the fierce glow of engine exhaust. The battered shuttle rose from its resting place, wobbling slightly as it gained altitude. Ilara's heart sewed at the sight, even as she realized she was too far away to reach it in time. She had known this might happen, had prepared herself for it, but the reality still hit her like a punch to the gut. "Go," she whispered, watching as the shuttle climbed higher. "Get them to safety." A hand grabbed her shoulder, spinning her around. She found herself face to face with Darius, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "What have you done, Elara?" he demanded. "Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself mixed up in?" Elara laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "More than you know, old friend. More than you know." The roar of the shuttle's engines grew louder, drawing Darius' attention skyward. His eyes widened as he saw the battered craft rising above the settlement. "No," he shouted, raising his weapon. Without thinking, Elara threw herself at him, knocking his aim off. The plasma bolt went wide, missing the shuttle by a wide margin. Darius rounded on her, his face contorted with rage. "You idiot! Do you know what you've just let escape? The power those creatures represent." "They're not creatures, Darius," Elara spat back. "They're people, and they deserve to be free." A flicker of something, regret, uncertainty, passed across Darius's face. But before he could respond, the night sky erupted in a blinding flash of light. Elara's heart stopped as she saw the shuttle engulfed in a ball of plasma fire. For a moment, it looked as if the small craft had been completely obliterated. But then, as the initial flash faded, she saw something impossible. The shuttle was still there, its hull glowing white-hot, but somehow intact, and it was changing, its form rippling and shifting like quicksilver. As Elara watched in awe, the shuttle's battered exterior smoothed out, becoming sleek and streamlined. New structures sprouted from its surface, weapons emplacements, sensor arrays, and strange, organic-looking protrusions that defied easy categorization. "By all the stars," Darius breathed, his voice a mixture of fear and wonder. The transformed shuttle, if it could still be called that, hung in the air for a moment, as if gathering its strength. Then, with a burst of speed that shouldn't have been possible, it shot straight up, punching through Nova Haven's atmospheric shield like it wasn't even there. In the stunned silence that followed, Elara felt a fierce pride welling up inside her. Zara and Lyra had done it. They had escaped, and in doing so, had revealed a fraction of the true potential of their species. Her moment of triumph was short-lived, however. Darius's grip on her shoulder tightened painfully. "You have no idea what you've done," he growled. "The forces you've set in motion. Genesis won't stop until they've recaptured those morphs, no matter the cost." Elara met his gaze steadily. "Then I guess we're in for one hell of a chase," she replied, her voice filled with determination. "Because I'm not about to let that happen." As Genesis agents surrounded them, Elara's mind was already racing, plotting her next move. She had made a promise to protect Zara and Lyra, and she intended to keep it, even if it meant taking on the most powerful organization in the galaxy. The hunt was on, and the stakes had never been higher. But as Elara was led away in restraints, a small smile played across her lips. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. The vast emptiness of space no longer seemed quite so empty, and the future, though uncertain, held the promise of adventure. Little did she know, her journey was only just beginning. The true test of her resolve, and of humanity's place in a universe far stranger and more wondrous than she had ever imagined, lay ahead. The being turned its gaze to Darius, and Elara saw her former partner flinch under the weight of that otherworldly stare. "We are what we have always been," it replied. "Adapters, evolvers. The morphs you knew were but a chrysalis stage. Your attack on Nova Haven forced our final metamorphosis." Elara felt a chill run down her spine. "The destruction of the settlement, that was you." The being that had once been Zara nodded, a flicker of regret passing across its features. "An unfortunate necessity. The energy released by our transformation was more than we anticipated. We mourn the loss of life, but we could not allow ourselves to be captured or destroyed." Darius laughed bitterly. "So much for your innocent refugees, Elara. They're just as ruthless as any of us." "No," Elara shot back. "They're survivors, doing what they must to stay alive, just like the rest of us out here on the frontier." The being extended a hand towards Elara, its fingers elongating into delicate silvery tendrils. "Come with us, Elara. There is much we must show you. Truths about the universe that will reshape your understanding of reality itself." Darius raised his weapon higher. "Don't do it, Elara. You have no idea what they've become, what they're capable of." Elara looked between Darius and the transformed morph, weighing her options. In that moment, she realized that her choice would not just determine her own fate, but potentially that of the entire galaxy. With a deep breath, she made her decision. "I'm sorry, Darius," she said softly, "but I made a promise." Before anyone could react, Elara lunged forward, grasping the morph's outstretched hand. The moment their fingers touched, she felt a surge of energy course through her body. The world around her began to blur and shift, colors and shapes melding together in a dizzying kaleidoscope. The last thing she heard before reality dissolved completely was Darius's anguished shout, "Elara, no." When the vertigo finally subsided, Elara found herself in a space that defied description. It was as if she stood in the heart of a living computer, surrounded by pulsing streams of data and swirling clouds of possibility. "Welcome," the being that had been Zara said, its form now a constantly shifting amalgam of organic and mechanical components, "to the true nature of our existence." As Elara struggled to comprehend her surroundings, more entities appeared, some recognizably morph-like, others utterly alien in form. Among them, she spotted a smaller figure that she instinctively knew was Lyra, though the child had clearly undergone a transformation as profound as her mother's. What is all this?" Elara managed to ask, her voice sounding strange and distant to her own ears. "This is the confluence," another entity answered, its voice a harmony of tones that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The joining of minds and matter, of past and future, of all possibilities." "We are not simply shapeshifters," Zara explained. "We are the bridge between the physical and the digital, between matter and energy. Our true forms exist across multiple dimensions, and what you saw in the material world was but a fraction of our being." Elara's mind reeled as she tried to process the implications. "But why reveal this to me? I'm just a human, a simple cargo holder." Lyra floated forward, her childlike voice tinged with an ageless wisdom. "Because you chose to help us when you could have walked away. Because you saw us as people, not as weapons or tools. You represent the best of humanity, Elara Vance." "And humanity has a crucial role to play in what is to come," Zara added. "The galaxy stands on the brink of a great transformation. The barriers between the physical and the digital are breaking down, and with it, the very nature of existence is changing." Another entity, this one a swirling vortex of light and data, spoke up. "Genesis seeks to control this change, to mold it to their will, but they do not understand the true scope of what is happening. Their actions risked destabilizing the very fabric of reality." "We need your help, Elara," Zara said, her form solidifying slightly into a more recognizable shape. "To guide humanity through this transition, to be a bridge between our kinds as the universe itself evolves." Elara felt overwhelmed, out of her depth in a way she had never experienced before. I don't know if I'm the right person for this. I'm no diplomat or scientist. I'm just—" "You are exactly who we need," Lyra interrupted, her small hand reaching out to touch Elara's arm. At the contact, Elara felt a rush of emotions and memories, not just her own, but those of the morphs, of countless beings across time and space. In that moment, she understood. The cargo she had been hauling all these years, the medical supplies, the colony equipment, the little things that kept life going on the frontier, it had all been preparation. She was a connector, a lifeline between worlds, and now she would become a lifeline between realities. "All right," Elara said, straightening her shoulders as a sense of purpose filled her. "I'm in. What do we do first?" Zara's form rippled with what Elara now recognized as approval. "First, we must return to the physical realm. Genesis will not give up easily, and there are others who will seek to exploit or destroy us once word of our true nature spreads. We must find allies, and that entity added, those among the various species of the galaxy who can comprehend what is happening and help ease the transition. Lyra's voice chimed in, filled with a childlike excitement that belied her newfound power. And we must explore. There are wonders out there beyond imagining, Ilara. Entire realms of existence waiting to be discovered. As the entities of the confluence gathered around her, Ilara felt a sense of anticipation building. The lonely days of ferrying cargo across the stars were behind her. A new adventure was beginning, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about the universe and her place in it. Well then, Ilara said, a smile spreading across her face. Let's get to work. The confluence pulsed with energy, and Ilara felt herself being drawn back towards the physical world. But now she carried with her a fragment of the vast, interconnected consciousness she had experienced. She was no longer just Ilara Vance, space trucker. She was a bridge between worlds, a harbinger of a new age. As reality reasserted itself around her, Ilara knew that the real journey was only just beginning. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would she. Betrayal and sacrifice. The sleek, biomechanical ship that had once been a battered shuttle glided through the star-studded void, its hull shimmering with patterns of light that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Inside, Ilara sat at what passed for a control panel, her hands hovering over surfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. 3 standard months had passed since her initiation into the secrets of the confluence. In that time, Ilara had seen wonders that defied description and horrors that haunted her dreams. The universe, she had learned, was vaster and stranger than she had ever imagined. We're approaching the nexus point. Zora's voice echoed through the ship, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Are you ready, Ilara? Ilara took a deep breath, steeling herself. As ready as I'll ever be, she replied. The nexus was a hidden way station, a place where various factions sympathetic to the Morph's cause could meet in secret. It was here that they hoped to form alliances strong enough to stand against Genesis and the other powers that sought to control the coming transformation of the galaxy. As the ship decelerated, a massive space station shimmered into view, its architecture a mind-bending blend of organic curves and crystalline structures. Ilara guided their vessel into a docking bay that seemed to grow and reshape itself to accommodate them. Remember, Lyra's childlike voice chimed in, trust your instincts. The knowledge we shared with you is now a part of you. Let it guide your actions. Ilara nodded, patting the small, shape-shifting creature that had become her constant companion. In its current form, Lyra resembled a silver fox, curled around Ilara's shoulders like a living scarf. As they disembarked, Ilara was struck by the diversity of beings gathered in the nexus. They were representatives from dozens of species, some familiar, others so alien she could barely comprehend their forms. All of them were here because they recognized the monumental changes coming to the galaxy and the need to guide those changes responsibly. A tall, willowy being with iridescent skin approached them. Welcome, emissaries of the confluence, it said, its voice a melodious trill. I am Sandra, coordinator of this gathering. We have much to discuss. Ilara followed Sandra into a vast chamber where holographic displays flickered with data streams and star charts. As the meeting began, she found herself drawing on knowledge she didn't know she possessed, explaining concepts that would have been beyond her comprehension just months ago. Hours passed as alliances were forged and strategies debated. The scope of what they were attempting was staggering, nothing less than shepherding the entire galaxy through a paradigm shift in the nature of existence itself. As the meeting was winding down, a commotion at the entrance to the chamber caught everyone's attention. A group of new arrivals pushed their way in, led by a face Ilara had hoped never to see again. Darius, she'd breathed, her hand instinctively going to the weapon at her hip. Her former partner strode into the room, flanked by a mix of Genesis operatives and beings Ilara didn't recognize. His eyes locked onto her, a complex mix of emotions playing across his face. "Stand down, everyone," Darius called out, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're not here to fight. We're here to talk." Zara's form shimmered into existence beside Ilara, her otherworldly presence causing several of the new arrivals to step back. "You have a strange way of arranging a conversation, Darius," she said, her voice cold. "How did you find this place?" A pained expression crossed Darius's face. "We've known about the Nexus for weeks," he admitted. "We could have attacked at any time, but I convinced my superiors to let me try diplomacy first." Ilara's mind raced. If Genesis had known about the Nexus, why wait? And why send Darius, of all people? Something didn't add up. "What's your game, Darius?" Ilara demanded. "Last I checked, Genesis wasn't big on negotiation." Darius sighed, suddenly looking very tired. "Things have changed, Ilara. What we've learned, it's bigger than Genesis, bigger than any one faction. The transformation that's coming, we need to work together if we're going to survive it." For the next several hours, an uneasy truce held as Darius laid out what Genesis had discovered. Their findings aligned disturbingly well with what the confluence had revealed to Ilara. The boundaries between dimensions were growing thin. Reality itself was becoming malleable, and something vast and incomprehensible was stirring in the spaces between. As the implications sank in, the atmosphere in the chamber grew tense. Arguments broke out among the various factions, fear and suspicion threatening to unravel the fragile alliances they had built. In the midst of the chaos, Ilara felt a tug on her consciousness, a warning from the part of her connected to the confluence. She turned just in time to see Darius slip away from the main group, heading towards a restricted area of the station. Without a word to the others, Ilara followed, her instincts screaming that something was very wrong. She trailed Darius through winding corridors until she saw him enter a room marked with glyphs that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Ilara burst in after him, weapon drawn. "All right, Darius, what's really going on here?" Darius stood before a swirling portal of energy, his hand hovering over a control panel. He turned to face her, his expression a mask of regret and determination. "I'm sorry, Ilara," he said softly, "but this is bigger than either of us. The things I've seen, the horrors that are coming. Sometimes, the only way to save the many is to sacrifice the few." With a swift motion, Darius activated the device. The portal flared to life, and Ilara felt a pull like nothing she had ever experienced before. Reality itself seemed to warp and twist around them. "What have you done?" Ilara shouted over the rising whine of energy. "What I had to," Darius replied, his voice barely audible. "May the stars forgive me." The last thing Ilara saw before the world dissolved into chaos was a single tear rolling down Darius's cheek. Then everything, the room, the station, the very fabric of space-time, collapsed in on itself. Ilara felt herself falling, tumbling through layers of reality. Fragments of other worlds, other possibilities, flashed before her eyes. She saw versions of herself that had never been, futures that might yet come to pass. And through it all, she heard the voices of the confluence, Zara, Lyra, and countless others, calling out to her across the infinite expanse of the multiverse. "Hold on, Ilara," they cried. "Hold on to who you are. We're coming for you." As consciousness slipped away, Ilara clung to those voices, to the memory of who she was and what she fought for. Whatever Darius had done, wherever this cosmic maelstrom was taking her, she knew one thing for certain. Her journey was far from over. The last stand. Consciousness returned to Ilara in fragments, like shards of a broken mirror slowly piecing themselves back together. She gasped, her lungs burning as if she'd been holding her breath for an eternity. As her vision cleared, she found herself lying on a rocky outcropping, surrounded by a landscape that defied comprehension. The sky above was a swirling maelstrom of colors, punctuated by floating islands of debris that might have once been planets or stars. In the distance, massive crystalline structures pulsed with energy, their shapes constantly shifting and reforming. Where am I? Ilara croaked, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. The in-between, a familiar voice answered. Ilara turned to see Lyra perched beside her, the young morph's form flickering between various states of matter. The space between realities, where the walls of the multiverse are thinnest. Ilara struggled to her feet, her mind reeling as she tried to process her surroundings. Darius, the portal, what happened? Lyra's form solidified slightly, taking on a more humanoid appearance. Darius activated an ancient device, one that tore a hole in the fabric of reality. The Nexus station and everyone on it was scattered across different dimensions. We've been searching for you for what felt like eons. How long has it been? Ilara asked, dreading the answer. Time doesn't work the same way here, Lyra replied hesitantly. In the reality we came from, it's been nearly a year. But for you, and for us while we searched, it could have been minutes or millennia. Ilara's head spun with the implications. A year. So much could have happened in that time. The others, Zara, the alliances we were forming. Lyra's expression darkened. Many were lost in the dimensional rift. Those who survived have been rallying what forces they can. But Ilara, things have gotten worse. Much worse. Before Ilara could ask for clarification, the ground beneath them shuddered. In the distance, one of the crystalline structures shattered, releasing a wave of energy that distorted the very air around it. We need to move, Lyra said urgently. It's not safe to stay in one place for too long. The barriers between realities are breaking down faster than we anticipated. If we don't act soon, there won't be a multiverse left to save. As they made their way across the impossible landscape, Lyra filled Ilara in on what had transpired during her absence. Genesis, reeling from the loss of the Nexus and much of its leadership, had doubled down on its efforts to control the changing nature of reality. They had begun experimenting with technology reverse-engineered from the device Darius had activated, tearing holes between dimensions in a desperate bid for power. The results had been catastrophic. Entire star systems had been swallowed by dimensional rifts. Alien entities from beyond the known universe had begun seeping through the cracks, their very presence warping the laws of physics. And at the heart of it all, a force of pure chaos was growing, threatening to unmake everything in existence. But there's hope, Lyra said as they crested a hill of shifting probability. The confluence has discovered a way to potentially reverse the damage and seal the rifts. But we need your help, Ilara. Your human perspective, combined with the knowledge we shared with you, makes you uniquely suited to interface with the systems we need to activate. In the valley below, Ilara saw a sight that took her breath away. A massive structure, part machine and part living organism, pulsed with energy. Around it, beings from a dozen different realities worked in concert, their forms shifting and adapting to the unstable environment. Behold, Lyra said, a note of awe in her voice, the Nexus engine. Our last best hope for saving the multiverse. As they descended towards the engine, Ilara felt a familiar presence brush against her mind. Zora's form coalesced beside them, her appearance now a constantly shifting amalgam of energy and matter. Ilara, Zora's voice resonated on multiple levels of reality. You've returned to us, and not a moment too soon. Before Ilara could respond, the air split open with a sound like reality itself screaming. Through the tear, she saw familiar ships emerging, the sleek, predatory vessels of Genesis. They found us, Zara said, her voice grim. They seek to claim the engine for themselves, to use its power to reshape reality according to their will. Ilara's hand went to her weapon, a determined set to her jaw. Then we'll just have to stop them. What followed was a battle unlike any Ilara had ever experienced. The laws of physics bent and warped around them as forces beyond mortal comprehension clashed. Genesis troops phased in and out of reality, their weapons firing bolts of pure probability. The defenders of the engine retaliated with abilities that defied explanation, reshaping the battlefield with each passing moment. Through it all, Ilara fought with everything she had. The knowledge imparted to her by the confluence guided her actions, allowing her to anticipate shifts in reality and exploit weaknesses in the fabric of space-time. As the battle raged, Ilara and a small team fought their way towards the heart of the Nexus engine. They knew that activating it was their only chance of stopping the incursion and healing the wounded multiverse. Just as they reached the engine's core, a familiar figure materialized before them. Darius, his form now a twisted amalgamation of man and machine, blocked their path. "I can't let you do this, Ilara," he said, his voice distorted and echoing across multiple frequencies. "You don't understand the power this engine holds. With it, we can reshape reality itself, create a perfect universe free from suffering and chaos." Ilara felt a pang of sadness for her former partner, seeing how far he had fallen. "And who gets to decide what's perfect, Darius? You. Genesis. That kind of power isn't meant for anyone to wield." "Then I'm sorry, old friend," Darius replied, raising a hand crackling with dimensional energy. "But I'll do whatever it takes to see this through." What followed was a duel that transcended the physical, a clash of wills and realities. Ilara drew upon everything she had learned, every experience that had shaped her journey to this point. Darius countered with the full might of Genesis's dimensional technology, reality warping around them with each exchange. As they fought, Ilara realized that this was more than just a battle for the fate of the multiverse. It was a clash of philosophies, the desire for control and perfection versus the acceptance of a chaotic but free existence. In the end, it was that fundamental difference that decided the outcome. Where Darius sought to impose his will on reality, Ilara opened herself to the infinite possibilities of the multiverse. She became a conduit for the confluence, for every being fighting to preserve the right to choose their own destiny. With a final, reality-shaking blast, Ilara overcame Darius's defenses. Her former partner fell, his form dissolving into streams of data and energy. "I'm sorry, Darius," Ilara said softly as she stepped past him. "I hope you find peace in whatever reality awaits you." With the path clear, Ilara reached the core of the Nexus engine. She placed her hands on the pulsing heart of the machine, feeling the weight of countless realities converging on this single point in space and time. "Now, Ilara," Zora's voice echoed across dimensions. "Activate the engine. Heal the wounds in reality." Ilara closed her eyes, opening her mind to the full power of the confluence. She felt the knowledge of a million civilizations flow through her, the hopes and dreams of countless beings across the multiverse. With a thought that resonated across all of creation, Ilara activated the Nexus engine. A pulse of energy unlike anything the universe had ever seen exploded outward. Reality itself shuddered, and for a moment, Ilara saw everything, every possibility, every timeline, every choice that had ever been or could ever be made. Then, slowly, the tears in the fabric of space-time began to heal. The chaos that had threatened to unmake existence receded, pushed back by the combined will of all those who fought to preserve the right to forge their own destinies. As the light of the Nexus engine faded, Ilara found herself back on solid ground, surrounded by the cheering forms of her allies. They had done it. The multiverse was saved. But as Ilara looked out at the still-shifting landscape around them, she knew that their work was far from over. The boundaries between realities would never be quite the same, and new challenges would inevitably arise. Yet, for the first time in longer than she could remember, Ilara felt hope. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, humans, morphs, and beings from across the multiverse, united in the greatest adventure of all, the journey into the unknown. As the celebration continued around her, Ilara smiled, ready to embrace whatever new wonders and challenges awaited them in the vast, infinite expanse of possibility. A new beginning. The celebration following the activation of the Nexus engine gradually faded into a somber realization of the work that lay ahead. Ilara stood at the edge of a newly formed reality bubble, gazing out at the slowly stabilizing multiverse. The boundaries between dimensions were still fluid, shimmering like heat waves on a distant horizon. Zara materialized beside her, her form a constantly shifting masterpiece of energy and matter. "You've done it, Elara," she said, her voice resonating across multiple planes of existence. "You've given us all a chance at a future." Elara nodded, her expression a mixture of pride and wariness. But at what cost? So many were lost, so much was destroyed. And Darius, she trailed off, the memory of her former partner's fate still raw. "The multiverse demands balance," Lara chimed in, her childlike form perched atop a floating fragment of reality. "Creation and destruction, order and chaos. What matters is that we now have the opportunity to shape what comes next." As if in response to Lyra's words, a shimmering portal opened before them. Through it, Elara could see glimpses of the reality they had left behind, the Milky Way galaxy, seemingly unchanged despite the cosmic upheaval they had endured. "It's time," Zara said softly. "We must return and help guide our respective civilizations through the changes to come." Elara hesitated, suddenly unsure. "How can I go back? After everything I've seen, everything I've become, I'm not the same person who left." Lyra floated down, taking Elara's hand in her own ever-shifting one. "That's precisely why you must go back, Elara. Your experiences, your understanding of the greater multiverse, these make you the perfect bridge between what was and what could be." With a deep breath, Elara nodded. She knew they were right. The real work was just beginning. As they stepped through the portal, reality shifted and realigned around them. They emerged in orbit around Earth, the blue marble hanging serenely against the backdrop of stars. But to Elara's enhanced senses, she could now see the subtle ripples in space-time, the echoes of other realities brushing against their own. "Beautiful," Zara murmured, her form adapting to appear more humanoid, a gesture of respect for the human homeworld. "And so fragile." Their ship, a marvel of morph biotechnology meshed with discoveries from across the multiverse, cloaked itself from Earth's detection systems. As they descended into the atmosphere, Elara felt a mix of emotions washing over her. This was home, and yet it felt alien after her cosmic odyssey. They landed in a secluded area outside a major city. As the ship's ramp lowered, Elara took her first breath of Earth air in what felt like lifetimes. The sense of grass, soil, and distant urban life flooded her senses, bringing with them a rush of memories. "So, where do we start?" Elara asked, looking to her companions. Zara's form shimmered as she processed vast amounts of data. "We've detected several hotspots of interdimensional activity. It seems that despite our efforts, some rifts remain. They're small, but growing." Lyra, now appearing as a young human girl to blend in, pointed towards the city. "And there are humans who have begun to notice. Scientists, spiritualists, ordinary people whose lives have been touched by the changes in reality. They will be our allies in what's to come." Elara nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "We'll need to approach this carefully. Too much, too fast, and we risk causing panic. But we can't afford to waste time either." Over the next several months, Elara and her morph companions worked tirelessly. They made contact with key individuals, brilliant scientists on the verge of breakthroughs in quantum physics, spiritual leaders who had glimpsed the true nature of reality, and everyday people who had experienced unexplainable phenomena. Slowly but surely, they began to build a network of humans aware of the changes in the universe. Elara found herself playing the role of teacher, diplomat, and sometimes protector. There were those who feared the unknown, who saw the blurring of dimensional boundaries as a threat rather than an opportunity. And there were others who sought to exploit the situation for their own gain. But for every challenge they faced, Elara found hope in the resilience and adaptability of her fellow humans. She watched with pride as people from all walks of life came together, united by the desire to understand and explore the new frontiers of reality. 1 year after their return to Earth, Elara stood before a gathering of world leaders, scientists, and representatives from a dozen alien races. The time had come to officially acknowledge the changes in the universe and Earth's place in the greater multiverse. As she prepared to address the assembly, Elara felt the comforting presence of Zara and Lyra beside her. She also sensed that countless beings across dimensions watching this moment, their hopes riding on the words she was about to speak. Distinguished guests, fellow beings of Earth and beyond, Elara began, her voice steady and clear. We stand at a crossroads unlike any in the history of our species, indeed, in the history of our universe. The boundaries between realities have thinned, offering us glimpses of wonders beyond imagination and challenges beyond measure. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces before her, human and alien, physical and energy-based, some even joining via interdimensional link. But in this time of great change, we have also witnessed the very best of what sentient life has to offer: courage in the face of the unknown, compassion for beings vastly different from ourselves, and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and understanding. Elara's voice grew stronger, filled with the conviction of one who had seen the infinite possibilities of existence. Today, we take our first official steps into a larger multiverse. We do so not as conquerors or exploiters, but as explorers and diplomats. We carry with us the hopes and dreams of countless generations who looked to the stars and wondered what lay beyond. She gestured to Zara and Lyra, who stepped forward to stand beside her. With the help of our allies, the morphs, and other beings from across the dimensional spectrum, we will forge a new path. A path of cooperation, of mutual understanding, and of responsible stewardship of the cosmic wonders we are only beginning to comprehend. As Elara continued her speech, laying out plans for interdimensional cooperation and the responsible use of newfound knowledge, she felt a sense of profound rightness. This was why she had been chosen, why she had endured so much. Not just to save reality, but to help shape its future. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be setbacks, conflicts, and moments of doubt. But as Elara looked out at the assembled beings before her, she saw something that filled her with hope, a shared vision of a future where the boundaries between worlds were bridges rather than barriers. As her speech concluded to thunderous applause, Elara knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The next chapter in the greatest adventure of all, the exploration of the infinite multiverse and humanity's place within it. With Zara and Lyra by her side, and the combined knowledge of the confluence guiding her, Elara stepped forward into that future, ready to face whatever wonders and challenges awaited them among the stars and beyond. The end.